us today. She's going to be recording this training session for the sake of others who are not attending this. We'll be uploading this training session into YouTube so that others would be able to watch it. So Rima, go ahead and start your recording. And I see you've started. All right, great. So, okay, let me just play my slideshow here. Okay. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Again, I'll be your presenter for today's training session. We are on day 2. My name is Mel Balsamo, and I see that Catherine has joined. Welcome, Catherine. I hope you have audio in case you have any questions later, but you can chat too, although I hope you can hear me. Yeah, again, so we're at day 2 of our qRules training. We'll be talking about useful commands for SharePoint integration. I'll be showing you the commonly used qRules commands. I know that we all know that qRules has a bunch of useful commands, very handy commands available, and it's a growing list of useful features and functionalities that you can add into your form. Yesterday on day 1, Hillary discussed about what qRules is, how it helps you, especially as an InfoPath designer, developer, to build your InfoPath forms without the need of writing code. You don't even need to know how to write code, right? Because qRules will help you just, help make your lives easier just by using rules, logic, in your InfoPath forms. You'll be able to make use of all those handy commands. And again, today our focus is all about SharePoint integration. Okay. Move on to my next slide. Okay, for today's agenda, give me 1 second here while I try to fix my slide deck. Okay. Yeah, for today's agenda, this presentation, I'll show you 3 of the useful SharePoint integration commands. The first would be the submit to SharePoint list command, and I'll try to be as slow as I can throughout this this session, since we have an hour and a half planned for this training session. I will try and make use of that time to make sure that I'm relaying information here and that people are understanding what we're talking about. And if you have any questions anytime during the training, just feel free to raise your hands. Yeah, Catherine, it's okay that you don't have a mic. I guess I can unmute you if we need to. Just if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or put something in chat, and I can see it right on my pane here, my GoToMeeting panel. That will catch my attention, and I'm going to try my best to attend to your questions. Okay, so going back to our slide deck here, we're going to first focus on submit to SharePoint list. This command allows you to submit repeating data into SharePoint lists. Very handy because most InfoPath forms, they have repeating data in it, and the question is where to store that data. Right? Aside from the XML file, you're going to want to store it in either a SharePoint lists or maybe a SQL database. But one of the most common scenarios is being able to submit those items, line items, into a SharePoint list. Okay, and I see that Catherine has a question. All right, Catherine, you're asking if submitting to list requires full trust. It is not necessarily 100% correct. It's actually depending on the environment or your requirement, but for the demo today, we are not going to full trust our form. I guess if you might be submitting to a list that you're not part of, if for example, external users are going to submit to a SharePoint list that they're not members of, that's one scenario I can think of where you need your form to be full trust. All right, but in this case, we are not needing that. Okay, I hope that answers your question. So going back, yeah, so that's a brief overview of the submit to SharePoint list. We're also going to talk about refresh SharePoint list items. This one works hand in hand with the submit to SharePoint list in the sense that you'd want to keep your data from your SharePoint list and in the info path form in sync. You want them synchronized, right? So whatever you delete in the list gets deleted in the form, and vice versa. So I'm gonna show you how you can configure your form to make that possible. And there's going to be a bonus. It's actually a bonus because it's not part of the lab that you're going to walk through today. I'll just show you a quick demo on how you can save images and files into a SharePoint library, a separate library where your form is not published to. So yeah, that is useful in a sense that you are not storing the image itself in the XML, and that reduces your file size, your XML, the form size itself, because we're storing the images, the attachments, the files in a library like SharePoint instead of in the XML. All that I'll be showing in the demo, and I'm going to walk you through building an info path form from scratch, at least, totally blank, no rules info path form, adding submit to SharePoint list, adding refresh SharePoint list items, and everything that goes in between. I can share some tips and tricks that I know in the middle. Yeah, and so you'd have an idea before you go through the lab on what we're trying to achieve and how things work and whatnot. And like I said, I'll also show you a demo form that saves images and files using the Save to SharePoint command. So I hope everyone is excited as I am. All right, so let's start with the Submit to SharePoint list command here. So what is it? It actually it features the ability to submit, like I've been telling you here, submit data from an info path form to a SharePoint list that it's been mapped to. So we need, first things first, we need to map. We need to create a mapping file that, to tell our info path list or our info path form which field am I going to submit to which column in the SharePoint list. So, and with that, we're going to need the Qdabra's info path to SharePoint list tool, which I'll show you soon here. So, yeah, there is going to be an ID parameter which will store the list ID. So once everything's submitted via the submit to SharePoint list command, it will return the list, the submitted items list ID in the XML, so that you can, it allows the form to update the list item when resubmitted. For example, someone reopens the form knows which list ID the line item is associated with, and so any changes to that will get resubmitted to the list instead of duplicating it. So that is essential. Best practice is always to use an ID field, therefore the ID parameter, in order to keep that synchronization. And we'll also be using that in the refresh SharePoint list items, again, to make things synchronized. So on a successful submit, qRules is going to update the indicated field with the value of the associated list item ID, because we know that all items in a SharePoint list have a unique integer value in the ID column, right? And so by saving that value in the XML for your form, the next time you run the command, this submit to SharePoint list command, next time it runs, qRules can perform an update on the existing item instead of creating a duplicate. So here's an example of the command syntax that I've listed too. The most, the simpler one would be this, so calling the command. I'm not sure if you've went through actually running qRules command yesterday, but the format is you write down the command name itself, and the command name is case sensitive, so we write submit to SharePoint list this way, then followed by the parameters. So SharePoint, this command takes the submit. I see, Catherine, you have a question. I'll get to that very soon here. So this command takes the submit parameter, which is going to be the name of your submit data connection. Yeah, and I guess you're gonna understand that more when I show you through the demo. So we need to create a submit data connection to this list web service called update list items. That's the one responsible for submitting and updating data from your form into the SharePoint list. So whatever you name that data connection, whatever name you use for that data connection, you're gonna call it in this submit parameter. And so if in your mapping file you've already specified the ID XPath, because notice in the second bullet here, my syntax has this ID parameter, the XPath following it, because in my mapping file I didn't specify my ID parameter there, which ID field is it in my form. So if you're gonna not indicate the ID field in the mapping, then you can simply add it in the command itself, the command that will run in the rules. And again, this all might be sounding confusing for now, but I will definitely show you in actual how to add these commands to get better understanding. All right, and so the mapping parameter here up on this first bullet, you're noticing that I didn't even add that in because the file name that I used for my mapping XML file is simply called mapping with a lowercase m. And so if that's the case, you don't need to declare the mapping parameter. And in this second bullet's case, I named my mapping file differently, so I called it my mapping. And if that's the case, you're gonna tell your mapping parameter that that's the name of my XML file used for the mapping. Okay, and before I move on to the quick steps, let me just check real quick Catherine's question. I hope I can show that before switching to the next slide. 1 second, I lost my GoToMeeting toolbar. Here we go. Is there, okay, let me just attend to some questions. I see 3 now. Kumar asks, is this command use SharePoint web service in background? If yes, which kind of authentication is required? Yeah, like I mentioned, it uses the SharePoint list web service. It's the update list items. It's called update list items, and it is using Windows authentication. So whatever's logged into the machine and whatever how you're logged into the SharePoint list, that's what it's going to use. Okay, so no special authentication needed there. Catherine, is there a limit to how many fields can be in a list? And is there a max recommended size for a form? Limit to how many fields? I don't know that there is a limit to how many columns can exist in a list. I know that we've mapped or we've created a bunch of columns in a list. We've done that a lot of times for past customers, and I can tell that there is no limit there unless I'm dreaming. Yeah, I think I might need to check on that as well. But as far as I know, there is no limit to that. Max recommended size for a form, are you talking about an XML file or the template, the XSN itself? We can't really control the size of a form, right? If it has a bunch of data in it, a bunch of images, we can't we can try to reduce, right? But once it gets big, it gets big. The issue there I am seeing is that it might be risking performance issues, right? Sometimes it can load maybe slower in the browser if it gets too big, lots of data, right? So especially views might be slow to render if it gets too big. So yeah, that's something you wanna watch out for, but not really. That's why I'd be happy to show you the Save to SharePoint command, which adds to reducing the form size later on. So another question in regards to the columns actually submitting correctly. Yeah, there's no limit to that. All right, so you can map as many columns as you want, as many fields you want into however many columns there are in your list. No limit. Okay? All right, going back here. Okay, so some quick steps in configuring your info path form to be able to use this command to submit to the list. Again, you're going to create the mapping file, and that is done via the info path to SharePoint list tool that I'm going to show you really soon here. So again, that mapping file tells which field goes to which column in the list. And then you're going to add the update list items list web service as a submit data connection. That's the one responsible for submitting and updating the list items. And then finally add the qRules command, call it via rule, maybe in a button. And that's actually what we're going to show today using the command in a button. Okay. And then there's this refresh SharePoint list items command. It is actually always used with forms that are set up to use the submit to SharePoint list command. And like I said, they work hand in hand. So where a form field is set to maintain the SharePoint list item ID. So that list item ID is essential. And I'm going to reiterate that throughout this session for you not to miss it, because without that ID, the form won't know which list item it is associated with. So again, refresh SharePoint list commands keeps the synchronization between the form data and the list items, and vice versa. Whatever gets deleted in the list gets deleted in the form, and whatever gets deleted or updated in the form gets updated in the list. That's what refresh SharePoint list does. So for the mapping, you don't need to redo the mapping because it uses the same mapping file that you've already configured for the submit. Again, it uses the same ID in the XML. One thing to note, it needs to be added. That rule that calls the refresh SharePoint list items command needs to go into the Qdabra rules data source finished loading attribute. So we're going to say finished loading if the form's finished loading, or if qRules has finished loading, then we call this command. All right. And again, I'll show you that later. There are two modes to this command, the report and the update command. By default, we're setting the mode to report because we simply don't want to cause data loss, right? So updating means that it will automatically update your XML form when you open it to keep it in sync with the list. So again, that's automatic. So if someone deleted an item from the list and someone opens the form that that was used to submit that data, on form open, it will delete that row, and you wouldn't know that it already actually did that. So by default, we are setting mode to report, which will tell the user that, you know, this item does not match with that item and things like that. But if you're confident that there's no need for report and just you want to automatically update stuff in your form, then you can use the update mode. Right on. Okay. So same with the submit to SharePoint list command. The command syntax is straightforward. You call the command name, and then there's this DS name parameter, which is the name of the data connection that you'll use to connect to we call it this guy here down here, owssvr.dll. This is what we need to connect to in order to keep that synchronization. So whatever data connection you name, whatever name you give that data connection, that's what you use in the DS name parameter. And again, if your mapping file does not use the default mapping name with a lowercase m, then you just call it in the mapping parameter. And mode, you don't need to to declare the mode parameter if you're just wanting to report, to use the report mode, because again, that's the default. But if you want to update automatically on form open, then you're going to call that mode equals update. Okay, so quick steps. We're going to need, aside from the ID field, an attribute underneath the ID field called qRules last modified. And this is case sensitive. This is where the date timestamp is stored, like when qRules last modified that list item, and the form needs to know that timestamp in order to know which one is the latest. Is it the SharePoint list that got deleted the latest, or did the user delete this item from the form? Yeah, from the form, the last, right? So we need this attribute underneath that ID field. Then we're going to add a receive data connection to that list using the owssvr.dll. I'll show you that soon here. And then finally add the command in the qRules finish loading node. Okay. If everyone's ready, I'm excited to show you how to build a form from scratch and add those commands in and see the magic in the end, see the form submitting to a list, and we're going to update things here and there and see the form update itself as well. And before I proceed, I guess I'd like to know if someone has a question at this point. All right, I don't see any, so I assume people are ready. Just give me 1 second here. Okay. So I'm going to pull right, so we said that we're going to start by creating the mapping file. So we're going to need the info path to SharePoint list tool, and I'll show you. I'll open my info path instance here, and I don't have any form installed. All right, so I installed all my forms there just to show you that I'm doing this from scratch. And this is how you install that mapping tool. We're just going to call it mapping tool just to because it has a long name, right? So we just want to cut it short. So we're just going to call it mapping tool. So I don't have it installed. I want to show you how to install it. After you've installed qRules first, of course, you're going to have qRules installed. First things first, you're going to go to the location where you installed qRules, and in my case, I've got it stored here, and I hope everyone can see my screen, although it might be small for others, but just feel free to adjust your resolution, monitor size, whatnot. So yeah, I've got it stored here, and right under there's this installable forms folder. Open that and you'll find the Qdabra info path to SharePoint list tool.xsn. That is what we need. And aside from that, we need the form installer. I think Hillary showed this during the training yesterday. So whatever installable form you've got, you can use this .exe file to install that. And so what I'll do is I'll just drag this xsn onto that exe file. And you're going to see that I'm dragging it. So it says open with form installer, and that's what I want to do. So I let go of my mouse there, and then you want to install a form template? Yes, I do. So it's going to run in the background, and the template was successfully installed. Thank you. Now, if I open my info path instance again, I'll see the tool underneath the installed forms category if it opens here. Okay, and that's where That's our tool right there. I'm going to double click on it to open it in InfoPath. And then this is how the mapping tool looks like, right? We've got the schema tree on the right here. That will help us to map which fields go to which columns. All right, so define, we're going to want to go to the Define Mapping tab because we want to create a mapping. So it says source XSN, so click here to attach a file. We will attach a file. In the lab folder, by the way, I know all of you have access to our training site here. We provided you logins. All the materials are under the documents, inside the documents folder. So we've got them separated into day 1, day 2, day 3 so far. So look under day 2, and all of our training materials are there underneath this folder. You can grab this starter XSN. So it says SharePoint integration start. That's what you want to start with when you start. When you go through this lab. Okay, no cheating. This end XSN has everything in it from step 1 up to the end. So no cheating. Don't go right there. Follow the steps in the lab, and so you'll be able to learn. So I'm going to open that start at XSN because I promised that I'm going to walk you through start to finish. So I'm not going to cheat myself here. If we look at Manage Rules and look at this button, there's no rules here. We're going to slowly but surely add stuff into it. If I will look at data connections, it only has the Qdabra rules because I already injected this with qRules. Okay. And so we've got this repeating table, this repeating group that has the ID. We talked about the ID, and then the title, and then value. So we essentially only have 2 columns right now, just for demo purposes, okay? But again, Catherine, there's no limit to how many columns you want to map. All right, so that's how our form is looking like. And going back here, in our mapping tool, we then want to attach our XSN file into this attachment control. Okay, and I'm browsing through that folder. I want to start XSN. Okay, now we've got that. Now we need to enter the SharePoint site URL, which I'm going to grab from my browser here. And I also need to show you my existing list. I creatively call it my SharePoint list. Okay, so this is where I want to submit data to. And you'll see that I already submitted some test data in there, dummy data. So you're going to grab your SharePoint site URL, not including the list. So this is our link to our SharePoint site collection. And then we click on Get SharePoint Lists. It's going to show a drop-down of all the SharePoint lists in that site down here. So click on that, and then I see my SharePoint list down here. Select that, and then you'll see that it's starting to create a mapping for that list. Okay, and if you can actually add more. I haven't even mentioned that, but with the power of qRules, of this qRule submit to SharePoint list command, you can submit data to multiple SharePoint lists at once. You know, at one click of a submit button, different repeating group into different SharePoint lists. All that is possible. All right, so I'm mapping to my SharePoint list, and I usually check this box just so for example, I move my list from one site to another, and as long as I have the same list name, I won't break anything, or else because otherwise it's gonna look at the ID, you know, the list GUID, which we know will changes from site to site. So I usually check this guy. All right. And so down here, there's another box that says data is from a repeating group. We know that our data is indeed from a repeating group, so we're going to check that. And then the base path will be the XPath to the repeating group. Okay, so we click on this 3 dots button, and you'll notice on the right here, we now have a schema tree. and we expand that. And this is coming from the XSN that we attached here. All right, so now I can grab all the columns that I want mapped. And let's start with the title column. I'm sorry, this is supposed to be the base path. So we're going to point it to the repeating group. And I know that we don't have that icon here showing it's repeating, but we know that my group 2 is, is the repeating node itself. So when I click that, it's going to take the path to that here in this base path field. So that's my group 2. So if you don't want to, if you're comfortable and you just know your way around InfoPath, you don't want to go through the schema tree, you can actually just write your XPath here. So for example, 21, you can, this is a free text field. You can enter your XPath right here without the need of picking it up in the tree, but we just provided you that convenience. All right, so once the mapping file knows which base path is, we start telling which form fields we want to submit to map. Okay, so we start with the title, and then we map it with SharePoint column. It's going to take the columns available in the list that you selected up here. In this case, we're going to map title to title, obviously. Then we're going to add another field mapping. So click on that and click on the 3 dots again, select my value. So for example, I don't want to keep clicking. I know the name. I can just type it right here, my value. Just make sure that, because things are case sensitive, just make sure that you're typing the correct case, typing the correct spelling, whatnot. But the schema tree is there for you to avoid those kinds of mistakes. So that value field is being mapped to the value column in the list. And then finally, I've reiterated the importance of the ID field there. We're going to add another mapping for it. Select the ID. Don't forget to click on this this 3 dot icon if you want to use the tree, because it's not gonna take it if you don't. So I click that and then select my ID. This time it's not mapped to any column here because the ID column won't appear in this drop down. Instead, what you want to do is click on the show link here. It's actually a button. Shows you the options. So here we're going to tell that this is my ID column. Okay, so you check that. So we've got this help text here. It says the ID field is not mapped to a SharePoint column. It is used by qRules for populating the form XML with the SharePoint list item ID upon successful submission. And you can also, if you ever have a rich text field, you can indicate that it is a rich text. Same goes with attachment, because the mapping for those 2 types are just special, that you need to do that extra step. Okay, so I think this mapping is done because our sample form is very simple. We've only got 2 columns to map. Next step would be to save it. So save as qRules mapping, hit that button, pick a place in your machine where you want to store it. I'm just gonna store it here. And it already has your default name for you. It says mapping.xml with a lowercase m. This is what we want to, this is the default name. And so if you use the default name, you no longer need to call the mapping parameter in your command later. So we're going to keep it like that, keep it as is. We've got the mapping file. We're done with the first step. Okay, now we need to add the list web service as a submit data connection in our form. So let's go back to our sample form. Okay, first, since we have that mapping XML ready, let's first add that as a data connection, because of course the form needs that in order to know the mapping. So let's first add that. It's going to be a receive data connection, and all of these are noted in the lab. So if I know you won't be able to follow through this, remember this later on, but all the steps are in the lab as well. You can refer to them later. So it's going to be a receive data connection for the mapping file. It's an XML document, obviously, so you select that option. Click Next. Add it as a resource file in your form. Okay, so add, and I'm just going to browse to where I placed it. Place it in the Day 2 folder. It's the guy right here. Okay. So now that's in my resource files, and I'm going to keep clicking next, keep this box checked so that we don't need to call it. It's going to automatically load, and we're going to keep the name of this data connection mapping. Okay. Actually, I need to correct myself there. It doesn't depend on the name of your mapping XML itself. The mapping parameter, this one here, this mapping parameter is what you need to indicate here is the name of the data connection that you used when you added the mapping. So if I name this my mapping, then this command is now valid. I need to specify that name in my mapping parameter. Otherwise, if I keep it like default like that, I don't need to add that parameter in the command. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Again, it's not the actual file name, but the name of the data connection. All right, so let's finish that. Next step would be to add the list web service data connection. It's going to be a submit data connection, obviously, because it's submitting to the list. So select submit data, click next. It's a web service, so keep that. And the path to the web service, it's again, this is going to be in the lab document, so you can refer to the URL later. But it's basically the site URL, and then underscore VTI bin lists.asmx. You can also see this on the web. If you search for update list items on the web, you'll see that that's it refers to that URL. It's trying to connect. Now there's a bunch of SharePoint list web services. What we're interested in is this guy right here, update list items. Okay, so select that and then click next. Now these parameters, you can, yes, everything is in the lab, Catherine. So these parameters, you don't need to specify anything because everything is in your mapping already. So just leave this portion untouched. Just click next. It's going to prompt you, do you still want to continue? Yes to that. And this is going to be our update list items web service submit. So this is not necessary to check because you probably in real world scenario, you'll probably want to submit your form, the XML itself, to a library, right? So uncheck that and then give your data connection a useful name that you can remember, because again, you're gonna need to, I think, let me double check here. Yeah, you need to declare the name of your submit data connection in the submit parameter. So let's just use this to keep things standard here with what we have in the slide deck. So I'm going to call this SharePoint list submit. That's the name of our data connection. Okay, click finish. So we're done with that step. And I'm just being really slow here. That's why it's taking a long time just to configure this command. But once you get the hang of it, it's going to be really fast and easy. So finally, we're going to add and execute the command. Okay, so I guess it's my, I'm just going to copy this now because we've got the same submit data connection name anyway, and this command name will never change. So I'm just going to copy that and paste it in my clipboard. So this submit button, let me pause for a while here. By the way, I see Vishal has arrived. So welcome to day 2 training, qRules training day 2. And I know you missed some part here. You didn't really miss a lot. We are just getting started into setting up the starter form, adding the first qRules command that I've talked about. It's called the submit to SharePoint list tool. Submit to SharePoint list. And this command submits items from an info path form into a SharePoint list. So yeah, I hope you're catching up there. And welcome. Okay, so moving along, let's go ahead and get this submit button configured. I clicked on that and I'm showing my rules pane. Let me click new and then action. I'm going to add a new action. This one says submit to list. Okay, and we're going to, every time you want to call, you want to do something, you want to use qRules, basically what you do is you create a rule that sets the value of the Qdabra rules secondary data source, this command node right here. Okay, any command that you want to run, you're going to set this command node it with. Okay, click OK, and then we paste our command right there. So it's submit to SharePoint list, the submit parameter, the name of our update list items, web service, data connection. And yeah, click OK. So that should pretty much work, I think. And we can get fancier later, like adding something such that this form submits to a library and whatnot. But for now, I just want to show you that we don't really need to publish this out to the browser, but just to show you that it's working in the browser, we're going to do that. And showing you form options here, security and trust, it's not full trust. Kumar asked that, I think. This is not full trust, and we'll see that it's going to work with a command without it being full trust. Okay, so I'm just going to quick publish this because I've already no, I'm lying. Let's publish it. Let's go through the publishing wizard from scratch here. Okay, I'm just going to give this a different name, demo. And publish it to our library. It's going to overwrite what I already have in there, but that's fine. We're creating it from the beginning anyway. Okay, so we want to submit it to a form library. And who's asking? Vishal is asking if we're going to cover submission to GBXL. No, we're not. This is all about SharePoint integration. Yeah. So we're not going to create a new library. We're going to submit it to my existing library, which I think is this guy right here. Okay, just to show you that this is working in the browser. That's why we're doing this. Yeah, I'm not sure with the schedule, Vishal. I'll check the schedule in a few here whenever we're done with all the demo. I'll check what's in store until Friday, and I'll let you know if there's anything for DBXL. Sure thing. Okay, so it looks like that's done. We're going to open it in the browser now. All right, so we've got our form. And just to show you there's no magic going on here, I'm not cheating you. I'll refresh my SharePoint list, and you'll see that I only have 3 items there currently. And we're going to start adding. I think I want to use everyone's name here. Let's see, we've got an IT guy named Sushil Kumar. Okay, we're going to add another, we say HR is Catherine. Okay, we're going to submit 2 for now, and then we're going to keep adding. Let's try and submit. Hopefully our form works. And of course, you're seeing this live. You see that seems that nothing happened, but I already clicked on that submit button. Let's look at our list if something already got submitted. Nothing yet. So what's a problem there? I already clicked on that button, but nothing seemed to happen. Once I insert, let me try inserting another item. Okay, so that's not, there's no post back going on right now. Let me just delete this, see if there's a post back. No post back. So one more thing to note, anything that uses qRules, there might be some instances where you need that control. For example, in this case, this button to send data to the server. Okay. Like set from what I did, I right click on the button, I went to the properties, went to browser forms, and then you might need to set this to always in order to send the post back to the server, and so for things to run behind the scenes. And whenever you're using qRules, another tip is when you're still in the development stage, still building your form, right? Your form's still not live. What we recommend is dragging the execution history from the Qdabra rule secondary data source, this repeating group right here, on the view, just for you to see what had run, what qRules command had run, and what failed, what successfully run, right? So we're gonna do this, and I'm just gonna change these into calculated value so that they wrap. Okay. And then, okay, I guess that's fine. So again, this, let me just check if I already enabled post back in this button. I did. Let me try a quick publish and see. And before I do that, I want to make sure that I actually really clicked on that button. So I clicked on it and nothing's happening. I might have done something wrong, but I won't know for sure until I display this history section here, and I think it's missing that post back setting. So we're gonna quick publish and then see if that makes a difference. That's the beauty of giving live demos. People can see in actual what's going wrong and how to fix things and whatnot. It means we're real here. Okay, we've got that. Now we open the form again, and whenever you make new publishes, old instances of this open session here will not work anymore. So I'm going to have to close that and work on this new one. So let me type things again here. I'm going to add myself first. So I'm your trainer for today. And now let me try to submit. Now it's sending data to the server. And yeah, showing us what command run and if it successfully did run or not. Since it says success, now we refresh our list. And we'll see that we've got that item there. So that's one. And now I can add another item. We're going to add Catherine now. I'm sorry. Can't type. And try and submit. And notice that it's returning the ID in that ID field right there. So that's because we mapped the ID. All right, so we submitted, it says successful. I'm going to do another refresh. And there's our list item. Let's try an update. I'm going to update my title here. So I'm your trainer for day 2. I'm updating my list item for myself, and I will try to resubmit. Since the form, the ID is stored in my form, it should know which list item to update since it's associated with that ID. Now we'll see right now that trainer, myself, let me refresh. Now it's updated. What we'll do, Catherine, I guess you need to go. We'll be uploading a record. We're recording right now, and we'll be uploading it into YouTube. We'll send you a link. Thanks, Catherine. Sad to see you go. Take care now. Yeah. So you saw the submit working. You saw the update working. Okay. What we are missing in this sample form is we're not storing it in a library. So if I close this, I'm gonna lose this data. Like if I close it, you want to save it? I guess you can save it right here. So okay. We don't need to add the submit to library, but in real world scenario, like I said before, you're gonna want to add a submit to library data connection. So let me try and open it. We still got our data in there, the list IDs especially, so we're good. But what's excuse me, what's important, well, another important thing to consider is if I make any changes to the items here. For example, I go in data sheet view, and I edit this item from the list itself. Okay, so we've edited that. When we open the form, it's not gonna take those edits. So you still got the HR value here, because and that is where the command called refresh SharePoint list items, that's where it comes into play. Okay, so if I delete this, all right, so that's deleted from the list, and reopen the form, it's not going to delete itself in the form because we haven't done the refresh yet. And that's what we're going to show next. Okay, going back to our form in the designer. Okay, so refresh. We're done with all the steps for the submit to SharePoint list. We're going to look at refresh SharePoint list items next. Let's see here. Okay, so we're going to add an attribute named qRules last modified.
Sorry, I couldn't find an interview modified.
Fun. Okay. What did I just do? qRules last modified attribute. I'm copying that. Then going back to our ID field, what we need to do is we need to add that as an attribute of the ID field. So add field, if you're adding a field underneath a field, it automatically will be an attribute. So I'm going to paste that name because it's case sensitive, but it's easy to remember. You just need to know that qRules is spelled with a lowercase q, uppercase R, and then you say qRules, and then the word last modified with uppercase L and M, something like that. Again, it's case sensitive, so make sure that you're typing it correctly. Data type would be text. Okay, so I've got that attribute underneath there. What I'm not sure of is if we can still use that existing form that we already saved before, because it doesn't have that field. There's nothing stored in this field yet. I'm not sure if it's going to work with us updating the existing items we previously submitted. If it doesn't, then we're just going to need to, I'm just going to create a new form for you. Okay, so we go to data connections. The first thing to do is to add a data connection. And I always forget the URL, and it is in the lab. So I'm just gonna cheat just a little bit. Look at the end XSN and check the URL there so I can copy it. But I'll show you how to build it. Anyway, so we need this whole URL, and see, I told you, just quick. I'll show you what we're going to do with that URL and how to build it. So this is a link to the owssvr.dll, the one I mentioned before. So it's going to be your site, your SharePoint site, followed by _VTI bin / and then owssvr.dll question mark, and then command, this shortcut for command display list. Okay, so this from here to the percent up to here is your list GUID, and I don't think that is the correct one, so I'm going to correct that. This is the GUID, decoded GUID to your list where you're submitting items where you want to refresh data from. So I'm going to grab that by going to my list here, going to list settings, go to list settings, and I can't believe it. We actually have only 30 minutes left. It's past 1 hour, past 1 hour. All right, so go to audience targeting settings, and right here in the URL, you've got all your from the everything inside the brackets or the braces, including the braces. That's what you need. Okay, so I'm copying it in my clipboard and I'm pasting it here. So I have that, and then followed by all the other junk there that you need in order to connect to the OWSSVR. Okay, so now I've got my URL built. I'm going to add a data connection. It's going to be a receive data connection to an XML document. Okay, Judith, sure thing. I'll send the link to everyone. Okay, so XML document is what you need to select for the refresh data connection, and then just paste that URL here. Click next, and then here in the next screen, you want to access the data from the specified location. So select that option. No need to store the copy. Click next, and then uncheck this this box. We're gonna call this data connection via a rule, right? So I'm gonna call this refresh. So that name is important again because the command syntax needs to know which DS name field is. So the data connection name goes into the DS name parameter. So that name is important. So I'm going to finish it. And that's about it for the data connection. Next step is to, of course, close the data connection wizard if it lets me. Next step is to go into the Qdabra rule secondary data source, finished loading node, and then we add the qRules command. We're now adding the qRules command, and it needs to be in the finish loading node. Hillary explained that in yesterday's demo. So we're going to add a condition. If finished loading equals true, which means qRules had finished loading, then we call the command, qRules command. So set command, set a fields value command, and type in your command. So it's the command name, refresh SharePoint, list items, case sensitive, and your data connection name and the DS name parameter. We used refresh. Again, here, if we name my mapping file differently, we're going to say the name here, but we didn't. So we're going to skip that. We can just go like this. For the mode, there's going to be a mode what you call this parameter. By default, it's report. So if you just want to report, you don't need to add this because again, by default, we're using report. So let's just remove that, and I'll show you the difference between the two modes. For now, we're going to show you report first. Okay, so we're good with that, and let's call this rule refresh, and then I'm going to republish my form and test things out in report mode. And I think we're just about we're on track of time here. We're going to end in 24 minutes. So yeah, cool. All right, that's done. And I want to see if our submitted form works now. Oh, will still work even after um, adding a new attribute. Says, okay, it looks like it is still working. Our old form still working, because right here we know that on load it's going to run that refresh command, and down here we've got a report. It says report for mapping. From my SharePoint list, item 12 is no longer present in SharePoint list, because remember that we deleted, let's go back to my list here, we deleted the entry for Catherine because she left. Just kidding. So yeah, we deleted that item from the list, and so our form is telling us that it's no longer present in the list, and then it's telling us that the other item matches, no changes in that other item. Okay, so our refresh report mode is working. Now what we're going to try next is the update mode, which will automatically update our form to match what we have in the list, to basically synchronize things. Okay, so and to do that, we just need to update this command and add a mode parameter and specify update as the mode. Okay, so I did that real quick. I hope you caught that. Publishing now again. I hope everyone's enjoying so far, and I know you can't wait to get your hands dirty with the lab and for you to try and test things out yourselves in order for you to add the features, the functionalities in your real life form, real world forms, right? So yeah. I keep clicking, force of habit, clicking that link. I don't want to open a new form. I want to open our existing form, which, let's see what happens if I do. Okay, cool. I didn't do anything. It deleted that second line item. Okay, now let's try, and you'll see down here it's still reporting. It still keeps a record, a report of what has done, what was done, because yeah, it keeps a history down here in general. And again, we only have this down here for debugging purposes, for demo purposes, so that we're seeing what's happening behind the scenes. But in your real world form, you don't want this shown anywhere. Maybe you're going to have a debug view just for your own purpose, but not to the audience view. Okay, so what we're going to do next is I'm going to update this list item and edit item, make changes to this, SharePoint integration, because you don't know, people might go to the list and not realizing there's an associated form with that, right? And just keeps changing stuff in the list. Then you're sure that your form, the next time you open it, are updated, right? Your form is updated with the latest data. Oh, that didn't work. Fine. Item 12 is no longer present in SharePoint list. All items match. Okay. So, okay, I guess I was wrong when I said that even after adding a new field, the qRules last modified, it's still going to work. Of course, there's nothing stored in that new field for this row, because when we created it, we still didn't have the qRules last modified attribute. And I hope that makes sense. So we know why that is failing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that and create a new row. And let's see here. See, fruit 1, apple 2, banana. Okay, and then we're going to submit. Okay, so we've got 13, 14, and refresh our list here. We've got those submitted to the list. And now let me update. Weird that it deleted the other items, so I guess deletes work, right? So fruit to yellow. So now I updated that, and let's see if our form takes that. If not, then I might need to create a new form from scratch. Of course, we're not saving it. We didn't submit or changes. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm being stupid. I'm so sorry. Let's just do this again. Okay. Let's do this from scratch. Fruit 1, apples. Fruit 2, bananas. And before I submit that, I'm going to delete these two guys so that we're not confused. Okay, we don't have them in the list anymore. Then I'm going to submit, and then error occurred deleting an item from the list. Item does not exist. Might have been deleted by another user. Let's see if we've got those submitted. Yeah, we've got those submitted. They're still referencing to the old rows I deleted. So let's save this and start again. So I save that, and I'm going to close, and I'll edit one last time. And reopen another time. There you go. Okay. So yeah, so we had updated our second item there. I updated from the list. It got updated in the form, and you already saw before that whatever updates I did in the form is updating the list. The next thing I want to try, if I delete a row from my form, so I'm going to remove apples there and submit. Let's just refresh this one more time. So we've got fruit 1 there, apples currently. I deleted it in the form. I'm going to submit. All right, so it's submitted successfully. And now if I refresh my list, it got deleted in the list as well. Okay, so that's all there is to it. That's the magic. Yeah, and really soon here, we're going to end this this training session, and you're going to start on with a lab that's uploaded in the documents folder, and then you're going to experience building, adding that functionality in your form yourself, and you'll find it very easy, quick, and straightforward. Just a quick recap here. The submit to SharePoint list, it's just calling one command there, the command name, and then the name of your submit data connection to the list web service, while the refresh command is added to the qRules finish loading node here. Again, the command name and the data connection name of the connection to OWSSVR, followed by which mode you want. Is it just going to report, tell you what changed, or is it going to automatically? Right? So that's it for the submit and refresh. What I want to show you is a demo of the Save to SharePoint command. Okay. All right. So the Save to SharePoint command allows us to save a file, a set of files, an image, or a set of images into a SharePoint library. And I've talked about briefly that one of the benefits of using this command is it reduces your XML size. Instead of saving the attachment in the XML itself, because people might attach a PDF that's a gig big, right? That's 1 gig big, although I can't imagine there being such a case, right? But yeah, to reduce your XML, we're not storing the file attachment or the image in the XML, but saving it into a separate SharePoint library using the Save to SharePoint command. So instead, we're returning the link to that saved file, the link to the SharePoint file in the form. And that's what I'm going to show you. I'm not going to go through setting up a form for that. We have an existing video tutorial. You're going to get this presentation. It's actually uploaded in our documents folder already. This is a link that you can click on, it YouTube video about that, and a useful documentation as well. All right, so let me show you this in the browser. So as in preparation, I've already created my form and I published it here. It's saving attachments to this separate document library. You'll see that we've already submitted a bunch of just the three images there. All right, so new document. Okay, so we've got it's also you can also attach not just one attachment, but you can also do repeating. So let me try to attach something here. Pick this XSN. This is one of the forms that I'm the save file. So what happens after when we save that? Look at what happened. It removed the attachment from the control and returned a link to us right there. All right, and of course, if I click on this, it's supposed to open the file with whatever program is associated with for that type of file. I think here for XSN, see when I click on that, it's asking me if I want to open it and save it. So that link is actually clickable. It accesses the file where it got saved, which we will check our library if it indeed got saved there. And this is our guy. So for the naming convention, just to make sure that things are unique, we are prepending the file name with the timestamp there, including milliseconds. Okay, I'm going to show you attaching PDFs. A PDF, if I can remember. Okay, this one is a good example. It's a PDF file. And I'm showing you multiple attachments this time. So that's one, and I'll add another. Let me show you an image. And if you actually use, if you want to store images, let me attach one of my favorite jewelry, Pandora. Yeah, so for images, you can actually use the image, forgot the name, image control, image attachment control, right? Picture control instead of a file attachment control. And that way you can see a preview of that image when you attach it. But now we don't have that. I'm going to click on Save Files. It's going to return the links to us, and we'll refresh our library here to verify that they got saved in that separate library, and we do see them here. I can actually open them from here. It warns me security stuff. So this is my picture. Same thing if I click on the PDF file. And from the form, we can actually click on the links as well. So I'm clicking PDF, and we'll see that it's going to open with the program associated with that file type. And in this case, it opened in the browser. Yeah, so that's for Dropbox. I didn't know that PDF file opened. So that is useful. Let's see. I think that form got stored, got submitted in my. Yeah. So this SharePoint attachment library where I published the form to, it's saving the XML there. So we're going to open this. I just want to show you. Open it in a text editor, and let's see, show you that it's not storing, if it's relevant even, it's not storing the attachment in the XML. And we're not seeing the file size there, but right here we see that it's only 2 KB. Look at that. When my image size, the image itself, the one that I attached, was actually 141 KB itself, right? If I didn't use Save to SharePoint, it wouldn't have been only 2 KB there. This XML, see right there. So that's the value proposition. Yeah, so that's it for the Save to SharePoint command. I know you're excited to try that command as well, and I'm not going to show you how to configure your form through this training session. Instead, you can watch that video tutorial and even follow the documentation that we got for you already uploaded. Let's just fire up the slideshow one more time here. Okay, so I hope everyone learned. It's sad to see 2 attendees go very soon, but again, we are uploading this video recording into YouTube, and for them to watch the remaining, whatever part they missed, and for others' benefits as well. To wrap up our course today, we showed you how to use the Submit to SharePoint list command to submit repeating data from an info path form into SharePoint lists. You saw that working, and to keep things synchronized, any changes in the form and or the list or vice versa can be synchronized using the refresh SharePoint list qRules command. And you want to reduce the size of your XML files by using the Save to SharePoint command to save image or file attachments into a separate library and return links in your form XML instead. So that was fun. Didn't expect it's going to take just the right amount of time, 1.5 hours here, but I hope you learned. I'm giving the floor, opening my floor to questions now. If anyone has questions, Vishal, Kumar, feel free to pop something up. And I know you have a question, Vishal, earlier, and let me check on that real quick here for you. I know I have a schedule, day 1, part 1. I think we have the agenda for all the course here. Yeah. So this is day 2, and then day 3, you're gonna use email to send parameters, state manipulation, qRules. So it looks like, since we call this qRules training, right, it only focuses on qRules and not with DBXL integration. Vishal, why don't you maybe send an email to support@qdabra.com or even directly email Patrick. telling him that you want a training session for DBXL. And did you want to integrate it, DBXL with qRules? Is that what you're looking for? qRules working with DBXL or just DBXL itself? I see. Okay, so that's not something that the team added in the agenda, I guess. So I'm sorry about that, but you can, yeah, qRules with DBXL things. So yeah, feel free to suggest that, and we can definitely look into showing people that if everybody's interested, right? Sounds good. Okay, so the next thing is for you to go through the lab. It's stored in the documents folder. This lab not only serves as a lab but as a guide too. So if you're planning to integrate the SharePoint commands, qRules commands into your form, then this serves as your guide to know what to do from step 1 up to the end if you want to use the submit to SharePoint list command, refresh SharePoint list items. Yeah, and then the save to SharePoint goes into a separate documentation whose link is in the PowerPoint presentation. So yeah, this is how the document looks. It shows you how to use the command, creating the mapping file, and adding it to a template. So it is all step by step. Okay, so go through it. Just get your hands dirty just to know, get the sense of how to do things. And so the next time you plan to just add it in your form, then you'll feel comfortable then. Okay. All right, and okay, we've got one last question, it seems. If we save files in separate list, then how to retrieve it in SharePoint? How to retrieve it in SharePoint? I'm not sure I understand your question, Kumar. Let me see if I can unmute you here, and so, no. You can't talk. I'm not sure I understand your question. You said if we save files in separate. Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Awesome. Yep, speak up.
So my question is, if I am saving the attached file in a separate list, as you said that by save as command, save to list command. So when we open the SharePoint list in the SharePoint side, so how to map these files?
Are you talking about this?
Yes, if I click on the master record and I want to retrieve the two attached file, then what is the way?
Are you talking about the save to SharePoint command, that saves files, or the one that submits list data?
No, if I am submitting a file with some record details like first name and last name, and this record having two files attached, and I am saving these two files in a separate list, and then when I view this record in SharePoint, like my first name, then how I will get the attached files, like my resume and my marksheet have attached to these records. So how to retrieve it in SharePoint?
You actually just go to the, if I'm understanding your question correctly, like how to grab it from SharePoint, right? We are,
right.
Yeah. So we've got this, the file stored in SharePoint, right? I think you're talking about downloading the file.
Yes, like if SharePoint stores the file in the same XML, it shows the links or the attached file. We can click on attached file or download file, then I can retrieve the file from that record. But if it is going on the second list, then SharePoint will not show the attached file in that list.
Oh yeah, if it's going to the second list. Actually, yeah, because I didn't show you how to use the command. You specify in the command itself where you're gonna publish, where you're gonna upload your file. So you can't do it in such a way that this file saves to location 1 and the other file saves to location 2, unless you have two separate buttons that saves files somewhere else. Then I guess you control that. And I'm saying you are the one who add the location the URL, right, the SharePoint location in the command. You specify that in the command. So you should know where to grab the files.
So I have to create another field for this in the first list, or
I'm sorry,
we
repeat your question, please.
So for the links of the file, the second list, can we do we need to make a second column in the first list?
I'm not sure I understand when you say second list. Are you wanting to save files into another list aside from, for example, this is our, and this is not a list, by the way, this is a library. Are we on the same page? Are we talking about the save to SharePoint command, this one that I just showed, which saves the links into the form? Is that what you're
Yes,
talking about?
I am
Okay.
talking about the third command, save to list.
Yeah, and so your scenario is that, yeah, is your scenario you're saving one file into library 1 and then another file into library 2?
Yes.
I can't imagine that being a scenario, to be honest, but I guess let me just I don't want to show you an example. X is in here.
Sushil, are you considering to the form having attachment?
Yeah, I think yes. Yeah, here. So, okay, I'll show you what this button does, right? It says save to SharePoint. This command, all right, so we say the command is, we specify the command save to SharePoint, and then in the command syntax itself is where we specify the URL. All right, so we say that this file is going to be saved to this library. Okay, so it in this case it's not dynamic, so to speak, right? You know the library you're saving files to, and then the XPath to your file attachment. I'm sorry, I might not just understanding your scenario, but yeah, if you can explain further. Vishal, do you have a clue as to, do you guys work together? I'm curious. Oh, cool. All right. So you might have a CRS.
So I can do one thing. I will take a lab tomorrow, discuss with Vishal, then we'll reach to you tomorrow again.
Yeah. Go through the labs, and then you can definitely send us emails if you have any question, and especially if there's anything specific to your scenario, we can definitely help out. All right.
Okay.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you guys for participating, and I hope you enjoyed and learned something from today's training. All right, you guys take care now, and have a good day.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Take care now. Bye-bye.